get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker, you're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats is restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love, because you're gonna be a heartbreaker, you're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
We can get on a plane and take a one-way ride, steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to disappear for a night, just to give into the need and leave it all behind.
'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. You're gonna be a heartbreaker, you're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. You're gonna be a heartbreaker, you're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for watching Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I am the People's Pundit, Rich Barris, and you guys can follow me if you don't already on Twitter right there at People's_Pundit. All right, we got a lot to cover because we're swapping up the schedules here. So in lieu of Monday, we missed the economic indicators. I want to get to them, but I want to get to them later. Right now, I want to start with Pennsylvania. I know it's great. Why Pennsylvania? There's a couple of reasons why. Number one, there's a lawsuit the Trump campaign just filed in Pennsylvania, and it targets the practices that we have been discussing for weeks. This is not just a normal absentee ballot push. There are very different things going on this year that Democrats want to do that is not very typical of regular absentee ballot. This vote by mail effort is not the same. And I want to show you because I want to show you why would they do this? If Joe Biden, like I saw in the comments, he'll be up by 20 points in Pennsylvania by the end of the week. Polls keep going in this direction, right? If that was true, why would they do this? And then there was a great analysis, actually. Usually I say he who cannot be named, but there's this string of reality analysis piece that are coming out that don't really jive at all with what the polling shows. And that's because, like I told you last week, there's this universe of polling, and then there's this universe of reality, raw data, and what we, first of all, our polling is not showing what public polling shows. Yes, Biden is up in most places, but the reason, again, I'm coming back to Pennsylvania, I'm shocked Donald Trump, with our numbers, is running the strongest right now in Pennsylvania when we look at all the blue wall states, the blue wall Rust Belt states, which is a little bit of a shocker to me because I thought Pennsylvania would be one of the harder ones to hold on to for him. But as it stands right now, we would give Trump a slight edge. I know that sounds crazy, and I know some people are, oh my God. We would give him a slight edge. We would. There's reasons, and we'll go over them. All right. But compared to other states like Wisconsin, which he won, by roughly the same margin, you would think is a little bit better for him, was one of the first ones called. There's just this huge swath of independents as opposed to Pennsylvania, which does not have a huge block of independents. There's a huge swath in Wisconsin, and right now they're dangerous for him. They are a true swing vote, and he's got some work to do there. Michigan is the only state where the turnout issue was a real issue. So you could, if you're a Democrat, you could point to Michigan and you could say, turnout killed us there. If we would have gotten a few more votes out of Detroit or Wayne County, then we would have been able to carry the state. That has always been true, and I have always said that was true. All right. But when you look at the other Rust Belt states, the Trump Rust Belt revolution, he just smacked her. He just beat her. He beat her in Pennsylvania, even though she ran up more votes than Obama did 4 years earlier out of Philadelphia. Democrats, the key to their win in Pennsylvania is that they drive up turnout. They drive up the margins in the Philadelphia and the surrounding suburbs. They run it up in Allegheny, which isn't as big, but it's still, the margin is nice and it's a nice padding. And then they run competitively in the rest of the state. And historically, they've been able to compete in the rest of the state. They did well in Luzerne. Obama carried Erie. But Donald Trump came along and there was a trend that was bubbling beneath the surface. Donald Trump came along, he exacerbated that trend, and he flipped Erie County. He flipped Luzerne. These are areas where Democrats used to win. Joe Biden is supposed to be that candidate who, being from Scranton a lifetime ago, but being from Scranton, he was going to run himself as the hometown boy. He's headquartered there in Pennsylvania, and he was going to run as the hometown boy, and he was going to flip these working class votes, because I'm telling you right now, I'm looking at the numbers myself. I will share them with you when it's done. It is not enough. What Joe Biden's running, and when we went over the Pennsylvania voter analysis, I told you, if Joe Biden wins, it will be because he does better in the suburbs outside of Westmoreland. He does better in Westmoreland. He recaptures some of that Westmoreland traditionally Democratic voting bloc. He does better in Bucks County than Hillary Clinton did, an area where Mitt Romney did well, but that coalition completely flipped. And I'm telling you, Donald Trump ran up those margins out there in the rest of the state because it's a bigger state than Allegheny and Philadelphia County. He ran these margins up, and we are simply not seeing any inroads with those voters. Joe Biden has got to win those. He's got to do better in the areas that we went over during the voter analysis. Right now, he's doing marginally better, but because that trend for Republicans since 2016 has continued, he's not doing well enough. And we would give Trump that state by a very small margin, but it's like it would break down to about 70,000 votes. That's what it would come down to. So in the early night, Joe Biden's returns would come in. It would be a huge lead, probably 760, 780,000 votes, upwards of maybe a little bit more due to population. And then he would watch that lead dwindle as the western part of the state came in. All right. And that's what we see right now. The other two states are a totally different question. I know I saw some of the other polling come out from another polling firm a lot of you guys trust and like. I think some of those results were a little bit too heavily weighted to seniors. All right. I think that's my own personal opinion. And we're looking at like Biden +2 in Michigan, Biden +2 in Wisconsin, which is a little bit strange, but that's because Michigan is doing what it did to us last time. A lot of undecided voters. We tried to push them and push them and push them and push them. They did not budge until the final 2 weeks. I'm not undecided. If you had to choose, what would it be? Up yours. I'm undecided. And then finally, in the end, those older white voters who were traditionally Democrats broke for Donald Trump in the end. I want to go over a little bit of this piece from the Crystal Ball. But before we get into this, And the reason why is because it really is dead on. It's dead on. The only thing is they talk about that 8% that Trump lost in the primary to Bill Weld. And I would rather win 92% of my base during the primary than 76%. Joe Biden lost a lot in Pennsylvania, and we talked about it the day that we went over those results. The problem for Joe Biden is, yes, Donald Trump could lose 8% of his base in Pennsylvania. No shocker, he did in 2016. The problem for Hillary Clinton was he won 12 to 13% of their base. And 12 to 13% of more is greater than 8% of less. You understand what I'm saying? All right, let's quickly look at in case you guys haven't noticed, we are sponsoring the Rasmussen Reports tracking poll again this week. Yesterday, the numbers for Donald Trump were absolutely abysmal. I looked at the raw data. He dropped to 42%. He's up a point today to 43. I'm going to tell you what happened here. One day, which was the day before yesterday, the numbers were bad. And it's weighing down that average because it's a rolling average. The daily presidential tracking poll from Rasmussen Reports is a weighted average. So if you have a terrible one day, it can pull down your numbers. It's a little bit better last night. So, not a little bit. It's better. When I say bad, I mean bad. I mean like 39% bad. It was bad. And the intensity index was, wider gap. That's the difference between what the percentages of people who strongly approve and who strongly disapprove. The latest figure includes 31% who strongly approve of the job Trump is doing as president, but 47% who strongly disapprove. Look, I suspect that is a temporary bump. When you look at the numbers, look inside the numbers, you cannot get there. Donald Trump cannot get to these kinds of numbers unless you have some of his supporters angry with what he's doing. So when Trump falls like this, that's when you know there's a chunk of people who will vote for him, but they're angry or upset with something he's doing. Could be the reopenings, could be how he's handling race relations and the policing. I tend, from the numbers that we're doing on our own, separate from Rasmussen Reports, I'm going to say it's the law and order issue. The percentage of people who tell us policing and crime or issues of policing and crime is their top issue has risen. And it's risen significantly. Usually we're talking about mid to low single digits. It is not on the top of the pecking order. It is not significant. But now it's up to about 11% nationally, which is stunning. And you have the economy and healthcare battling it out. A week ago, the economy was the top issue, an area where Donald Trump wants to be. Now, because of the COVID reopenings, it's pretty clear that healthcare is taking a little bit of a lead again. It's not much. It's not much, but we always do something others don't do. And we'll say, what's your top issue? And then we'll ask them with the same issues in a follow-up. Please rank by 1 to whatever, 1 being the most important issue and whatever on a 10 scale, like, or whatever it may be, being your least, important issue. And even when the economy and jobs were the number one issue, if you just gave them a flat multiple choice, healthcare had a slight intensity edge. The ranking score was slightly higher, which tells us something. It tells us there are more people who choose health. There are more people who chose economy and jobs first, and then healthcare second, than there were people who chose healthcare first and the economy and jobs second. You understand what I'm saying? So overall, healthcare is a more intense issue right now. And that is no doubt due to the media going all over, the increased cases in coronavirus. Forget the complete lack of trend, lagging into trends, with deaths and even hospitalizations and ICUs. A lot of what we're seeing in Florida right now, as you saw if you're on PPD, the flu, the rate of visits to the emergency room from people who have flu-like symptoms is rising at a much faster pace than the rate for those who are visiting for COVID-like symptoms. So we're having, when they report these numbers, they act like coronavirus is the only reason why people get hospitalized. And like the head of the CDC said last week during the press conference, which I wanted to talk about yesterday before I had to shuffle up the show, and I'm not going to get into it now. When this virus pandemic first hit, pneumonia was a very a higher or all right, pneumonia fell as a cause of death. It was dramatically lower than its historical annual death count. This time, during this little wave, whatever you want to call it, pneumonia is not playing as prominent of a role. So that is what I'm talking about when I'm saying there is no doubt that pneumonia, in the initial death count, pneumonia played an outsized role. I have no doubt that deaths from pneumonia were recorded as coronavirus deaths. Nothing else explains the drop-off. But we can talk about that later. That's it. I'll leave that there with the Rasmussen track poll. Let's wait until tomorrow to see what it says, because the reason, again, while it was down, it was all over Twitter. Trump's favorite poll is down, and I'm like, great. The day we do the day that we do the sponsoring, they're gonna love this. Trump's favorite pollster has him down. I mean, it's just so corny. Their line is just getting so old. They need to find new lines. But that was because of one day where it really fell into the dookie. And I'm curious to see whether it popped back up a point today. And I'm curious to see where it goes from there. All right. Rasmussen also, while we talk about poll results, and I want to get into more of what we're seeing in our state results. I would have, if we had the show yesterday, I would have went over this, but about 4 in 10 voters think Joe Biden has dementia. Now, Trump supporters can laugh about that, but why aren't you creaming a guy that much of the country thinks has dementia? Right? So take that as your own issue. Take that as your own issue. But 40%, about I think 20% of his own party thought that he had dementia, and more than roughly 6 in 10 Americans thought that he needed to address this issue publicly. Now, Joe Biden's average vote share across these primaries is abysmal for a candidate whose race is effectively over. So interestingly, when we look at Pennsylvania, about 20% voted for Bernie Sanders. There is this chunk, and the national polls are showing absolute universal support for Joe Biden among Democrats. I got to tell you, this is not something I really can confirm. Both candidates have at least some element of their base. I'm telling you, I know this goes against the grain, but Trump's is a smaller share. Donald Trump's support among his party is historically high. Now, everybody's made a big deal about how much Bill Weld won in Pennsylvania, in a very important state. Guess what? He lost that much of his base in 2016. That's what I'm trying to say. Typically, incumbents expand their appeal. Donald Trump is just trying, it appears, and it looks that way from the polling, he's just trying to cobble together a large coalition of people, that are representative of the coalition that he had in 2016. I think it's a very risky strategy, but over the last 4 years, in a state like Pennsylvania, for instance, where Democrats once enjoyed a huge voter registration edge, he has chopped that down more. He has whittled and whittled and whittled away at the base edge for Democrats in a state like Pennsylvania. In Florida, same deal. He has whittled and whittled and whittled and whittled it away. And there is no doubt I'm having trouble reaching men, not just liberal men want to talk. They want to talk to you. But men who are not liberal and people, obviously, who identify as Trump supporters. In 2016, if you guys have been following me for a while, I did not fully buy the shy Trump voter, which is a result of social desirability bias. I just figured they just were not reaching these voters. That was my main argument. Of course, there was an element of a shy Trump voter. I just did not think it was as significant as other people were making it out. And I still don't believe that happened in 2016. This time around, there's just no doubt. It is not uncommon for a raw sample to come back 60% women, 40% men. Women are just generally speaking more likely to take a survey than men. That is just true. They're more willing to participate. Now that gap has grown. And it's grown because more liberal people are more willing to participate in surveys, whereas Republicans and conservatives, it's really not even along those lines, which is why I don't like to do that. It's if you do support Donald Trump, you don't want to say that in law, and again, most people will, but if there's 5-10% that are saying, I don't want to talk to you, I don't want to do this, that could obliterate your election, your polling results. It can cast you way out in left field. You could be way wrong. And as I'm looking at these numbers, this is coming from somebody who's been critical of the Trump campaign. I don't think they're running a good campaign. I just don't. I think, and this is coming from somebody who thinks that Joe Biden has a lead in 2 of those 3 states. May not be a big lead. It's not as big as, the public polls show. He's got a slight edge. I'm telling you, I'm telling you, I know. And then I'm seeing all of these stories. I don't know if you guys saw it, but I want to go over it in Politico. I'm not going to pull it up. I'm just going to talk about a couple of things about it. All right. The title of the article was in Politico magazine, and it's in quotes. I'm tired of being the help. And then coupling this all with the lawsuits the Democrats are filing, if they were so confident that Joe Biden had this kind of a lead that you see in most of the big media polling, if they were that confident, then why do they feel the need to reform our election without legislation, reform our election laws, remove verification procedures, send out ballots to anybody, whether they're requested or not? And we're going to go over the Trump campaign's lawsuit because while Donald Trump does not phrase this issue on Twitter correctly, his campaign did in the lawsuit. They nailed it. And they're targeting Western Pennsylvania because they know what this Politico magazine article reported. It's not enough. They're not confident that they can drive up black turnout as high as Barack Obama. They are not confident in that. They are terrified they will end up like Hillary Clinton, ahead of the polls and behind on votes on election day because they just didn't get out enough black voters in the urban areas. And they know that Joe Biden simply is not making inroads with these votes, with those voters, those working class voters. If he was, why would they need to specifically target Western Pennsylvania like this? What, you can't flip Erie County back on your own? The answer is no, he can't. It doesn't matter he's from Scranton. He's the reason why Hillary Clinton destroyed herself in that state. I'm going to put a lot of coal miners out of jobs. You remember that? The basket of deplorables mattered. Obama did say, bitter clangers to your God and guns kind of thing, but people still believed he cared about him, and he still had appeal to working class people. He did. Just because you're his vice president does not mean those votes are going to translate. That is never true, and it's not true in the polling. And I want to read this. This is Michigan particularly, but if it's happening in Michigan, it's happening in Pennsylvania. And like I told you, what's important about this, Michigan is the one state where they could really say they have an argument. We fell short on turnout in black precincts in Detroit. As a result, we did not get the turnout we needed in Wayne County. And that allowed Donald Trump to squeak through, win the state by 10,000 votes. Go to People's Pundit Daily right now, type in the search bar, Trump Rust Belt Revolution, and you will see we went through every single Rust Belt state. Michigan is the only state, despite him flipping 12 counties that voted for Barack Obama, he still could have lost if she would have done a little bit better in Wayne. Just a little bit. But she fell short. Black voters did not go to the polls for an old white woman. Will they race out to the polls for an old white man? I don't know. Tanya Griffith in this story doesn't think so. Here's the thing about black people, she said. We are real passive politically until they give us a reason not to be. And trust me, we're not real passive right now. So she's saying they're amped up now. And it's because of George Floyd. All right, what happened with George Floyd? 3 weeks ago, she said that wasn't the case. Black voters, she knows, were coasting on autopilot during this election year. Even though Joe Biden had a huge lead, they didn't think turnout was going to be any bigger. Watch. There was no feeling of intensity. And then came the killing of George Floyd. Quote, that lit a fire under our, like nothing I've ever seen, Griffith said. But how long, unquote. But how long will that fire burn? Griffith is skeptical. A 55-year-old clinical therapist. She was born and raised in Detroit. She had to work hard to make it, but she knows plenty of folks who didn't make it. She was drilled by her parents on basic civic obligations, but she knows plenty of folks who weren't. Griffith will vote this November, but she isn't excited about it. And truth be told, she doesn't know anyone who is. Quote, I bet our numbers come up because nobody liked Hillary Clinton. But I don't think they come up by much. And I know they don't get back to those record numbers for Obama. We look at Joe Biden and see more of the same. It's about the era he came up in. It's about his identity. He's a rich, old white man. What are his credentials to us, other than Obama picking him? It's nice that he worked with Obama, but let's keep it real. That was a political calculation. Obama thought he needed a white man to get elected, just like Biden thinks he needs a black woman to get elected. We can see through that. This is what I can't stand about big media. From white to black to Hispanic, down the line, urban, metro, burbs, exurbs, rural America, they think you're all stupid. They have no respect for Americans. They think they're dumb. They do, folks. They think you're stupid. That is the God's honest truth. They definitely think urban black voters are there for them every 4 years. That's it. There's no real counter argument there. Well, who else are you going to go vote for? The racists in the Republican Party? This is where it comes down to that, and Obama was beautiful at this. Mitt Romney was a fool to think that he could use the hatred of Obama to defeat the political support that he had. When we ask the question, are you voting for Joe Biden or against Donald Trump? The numbers are almost reversed from 2012. Even when Mitt Romney looked like he was running a little bit stronger. Are you voting for Mitt Romney or are you voting against Barack Obama? In the end, a lot of those voters, folks, just didn't show up. Because it's corny to say it. It really is. But sometimes, while it is a powerful force, hatred is just not enough sometimes. It's just not enough. And Donald Trump doesn't need to pluck off that much of the black vote. He really doesn't need to. His issue right now is whites in the burbs. That's his issue. Even some that voted for him before. That's just true. We see it. The burbs are not the same as they were 4 years ago, and they damn sure aren't the same as they were 8 years ago. But that still doesn't mean he hasn't seen some slippage there. Here's the problem, though. This is Michigan. Here's the problem. The problem is it still doesn't matter because in a state like Pennsylvania, for instance, when you do it on net, right, there used to be all 4 suburban counties in and around the Philadelphia area, they have all now become registration heavy Democrat. Not heavy, but Democrats lead in all 4. Republicans used to have one, had one remaining even in 2016. So it's a clear indication the registration trends show those areas are moving still more to the Democrat. Bucks County, they've seen registration gains. But in the rest of the state, what used to be Democratic areas, and even still some that are Democrat in registration, those gains have dwindled. We see counties where Donald Trump carried in 2016 that Democrats still have a registration edge. But because Donald Trump won 12, 13% of the party base, those are the counties that he flipped anyway. And all in all, on net, when you look at the state of Pennsylvania, statewide, the registration edge for Democrats over the last 4 years has fallen. So even the gains that they made out in the West without an increase, without Joe Biden being able to ramp up these voters that Griffith is talking about, he just can't get there. It doesn't really matter what the polls say. Not right now. It's the summer. Nobody cares. Nobody's really paying attention. And the pandemic is hurting Donald Trump. Come November, things can be a lot different. I wrote about this 4 years ago. Forget about early summer polls. Sometimes the polls in October are wrong. At the end of October, Hillary Clinton in many national polls still had a double-digit lead. So they can say what they want when they're in front of a camera on cable news. But they would not be holding these meetings if they felt that comfortable. They would not be filing these lawsuits, which we're going to talk about in a second on the other side of the break, if they felt comfortable. Look, the bottom line is, and I want to cut to I want to do a spiel real fast. The bottom line is, I'm just seeing a lot of similarities here. In the media, they focus on that suburban vote. They do. They focus on it, but that is not all there is to the story. In politics, it is never about one thing or the other. Never. You could look at a couple of counties in 2016 as the early results in Pennsylvania rolled in, and you could say, there's no way Trump's going to carry the state of Pennsylvania. He did so much more. He did so much more poorly, versus Mitt Romney in this area and that area. But they missed the underlying trend in other places. They tend to focus on the more populous, Cosmo areas. That's what they do. All right, let's get through a quick spiel, and then we'll get back and we'll look at this lawsuit and why it's important. And again, I'm not over here being extra positive for Donald Trump. Now I have some of my own polling numbers, and I'm always more confident in what I see. And speaking of this black vote, I know I'm supposed to go to this break, but I don't want to forget this. Black voters. I am in several urban districts right now because I want to know about this turnout specifically. I want to know about this turnout in these areas. And I want to know how they feel about defund the police and reducing police budgets. Black voters are not the drivers of these policies. Of course, there's going to be some who support it, but white college-educated liberals are driving up the numbers for defund the police and even reducing the police budget. There is no difference in a support for defunding the police than there is for reducing police budgets. So black voters say, no, we don't want to defund the police. In the follow-up question, what about reducing funding for the police in your community? No. And there's not much statistical difference between the answers for those questions. So what I'm saying is, not only, obviously, it's not me, ask Ms. Griffith. Not only are they not confident they could drive out these voters, but they're talking to them wrong. They're talking to a fringe, and they're ignoring the majority. It's unbelievable. And Republicans would be incredibly stupid to fall for this. Somebody like a Mike Braun, by the way, which was a little bit shocking to me. All right. It is, let's take a real quick spiel. It is 10:35 on Tuesday, June 30th. Thanks for watching Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I am the People's Pundit, Rich Barris. We are talking polls in Pennsylvania and more today. Follow me on Twitter right there at Peoples_Pundit if you don't already on Twitter. Don't forget to subscribe to the page on YouTube. The channel on YouTube, People's Pundit Daily, and hit that notification bell because look at how screwy our schedule is getting anyway. This is what I've been trying to tell you guys. It will notify you when we go on. Maybe we have to scrap something like yesterday, so we'll add a show like today. All right? So don't forget to do that. Also, mosey on over if you're a Facebook user to the page, People's Pundit Daily on Facebook, and like it. All right? Like it, follow it, whatever. We'll love you for it. And then, of course, the ultimate way to support the show and the things we do here is to subscribe to People's Pundit Daily, which funds everything. And you can do that by going to peoplespunditdaily.com or take the short link right to the subscriptions, ppdnews.us/subscribe. ppdnews.us/subscribe. Last week was a good week, real quick. And we just want to tell you, those of you who did, we thank you and love you for it. Yes, last week was a really good week. And we notice you, we see you, and we appreciate you. All right? I have a lot to burn through here today, so I will try to do my best to get to some questions. But listen, yesterday in my inbox, bing, I get a statement back from the Trump campaign, which I had been waiting for, about this lawsuit. All right? I knew they would send something out to us, right? I have been trying to explain this issue this year and what the real potential and danger, the potential for and danger of voter fraud comes from in these plans that Democrats have been pushing. There's been a lot of misinformation or incorrect information, which doesn't make somebody like me, it doesn't make my job any easier. It sucks when people do this stuff because then I have to go online and I got to try to undo it. I got to try to you-know-what it, right? And in truth, it's much, much easier to understand if you just watch Inside the Numbers. The media wants you to believe that only people who are registered to vote are going to get these ballots. Okay? That's what the media wants you to believe, and that there's not much difference between what they're asking for this year and absentee ballot voting, which we've had for a long time. That's not true. What they are asking for, and the difference really threefold. One, everybody gets a ballot. There's a reason why most states have request only. There are tons of inactive, ineligible voters on the voter rolls. Because again, what's our saying, folks? Just because you're registered to vote does not mean you're eligible. Being registered to vote in the United States of America is not the same as being eligible to vote. I know that sounds crazy, but we've been over it a million times. There are people who are inactive for whatever reason. Maybe they don't vote. Maybe they don't want to vote. They'll get a ballot regardless whether they do it or not. They're probably not going to get it or use it, but some ballot harvester could absolutely come around and fill it in for them. If you are dead, you are getting a ballot. If you no longer live in an address that is on your registration, you're still getting a ballot, and the person who is sitting at home will get it for you, right? Remember this? That's still everybody who lived at this gentleman's residence for the last 20 years in Macomb County. They will, could you imagine? Look, the resist movement, not that it's only one side who could do it, but the resist movement has proven themselves pretty much willing to do absolutely anything, break any law to resist. They will leak top secret Treasury documents. They will leak to the media top secret documents from a Senate Foreign Affairs Committee, a Senate Intelligence Committee. There is almost nothing that they won't do. There is no profession that has not been tainted by the desire to resist Donald Trump. You're telling me if those 4 ballots didn't land in the mailbox of a resistor, they wouldn't fill them out? And they'd get away with it too, because that brings us to the second thing different. Verification procedures. They want them banned and eliminated. And in fact, they're getting a lot of this. They're getting a lot of what they want. They're forcing the Trump campaign and the RNC to countersue, to waste resources, to countersue, to stop these efforts. Signature match, gone. Voter ID, gone. These are verification procedures. So I want to submit my ballot. I vote by absentee in Florida. I want to submit my ballot. I go down, I mail it in. The supervisor of elections is going to look at my signature on record from my driver's license, and they're going to match it up with the one on the ballot. If it doesn't look the same, I'll be notified. I either have to come down there and prove it, or if I can't, I'll fill out a provisional, and I'll be lucky if it gets counted if the committee decides that they're going to count it. Most of the time, those will not even be counted on election day, which is also why Democrats want votes counted after Election Day, those that were received or tallied after Election Day. ID, signature match, out the window. This is unfettered vote by mail. It is not absentee ballot voting. And then the third difference, regardless of whether ballot harvesting is explicitly prohibited in the state, by law, it is illegal. Like it is in Nevada. They not only want it, they want taxpayers to fund it. And those people will go out and get the 4 ballots that are sitting on the coffee table in Macomb County, in Luzerne, in Erie, in Montgomery, in Westmoreland. And they will fill them in. And if you think they won't, you're stupid. Congratulations. You're naive to the point of stupid. As the Trump campaign's filing rightly points out, not only do we know this happens, there are indictments already. And I want to read a statement from Jenna Ellis that we got from this, okay? Election integrity should not be a partisan issue. Yet Democrats are constantly trying to cheat and manipulate election rules to undermine safeguards and security around the November election. President Trump is firmly committed, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to get into that. That's propaganda stuff. Shifting from an absentee voting system to one that pushes unmonitored vote by mail creates opportunities for fraud and encourages ballot harvesting, where paid political operatives try to collect and deliver loose ballots. That's what they're called. We went over in the one show. In Clark County, folks, they're pinned to the cork boards in the common area in the apartment complexes. They're riddled. They're littering the streets. They're overflowing trash cans. In Clark County alone, almost 200,000 of those ballots went out. This lawsuit seeks to restore integrity into the process and mandate the ability of campaigns to monitor the casting, collection, and counting of all votes. Every American, regardless of which candidate they support, should be concerned that our elections remain free and fair. This has always been a nonpartisan issue for me. I don't care who the fraud helps. When Republicans cheated in North Carolina, I buried him too. This is a self-governing society. Election integrity is paramount. You cannot put it in question. The sad thing is, we tend to get a little bit spoiled and tend to think that basic rules of laws of human nature, basic natural law doesn't apply to us. Have you ever seen what happens to an emerging democracy when their election integrity is cast in doubt? That's when whole regimes get cut off. You have got to have faith in your election system for self-governance to work. It's everything. Everything. As stated in the lawsuit, free and fair elections are essential to the right of Americans to choose through their vote whom they elect to represent them, upending our entire election process and undermining ballot security through unmonitored vote by mail to the single greatest threat to free and fair elections. To be free and fair, elections must be transparent and verifiable. Yet, defendants have explicitly chosen a path that jeopardizes election security and will lead and has already led to the disenfranchisement of voters, questions about the accuracy of election results, and ultimately chaos headed into the upcoming November 3rd, 2020 general election. This is all a direct result of defendants' hazardous, hurried, and illegal implementation of unmonitored mail-in voting, which provides fraudsters an easy opportunity to engage in ballot harvesting, manipulate or destroy ballots, manufacture duplicitous votes, and sow chaos. And then that was actually a piece of the lawsuit. So Trump goes to Twitter, makes people makes it hard for people like me to explain this. And then the media uses that incorrect tweet or whatever he puts out there. They use that to BS everybody into thinking that this is just, this is just simple absentee ballot voting. We do this all the time. Even Republicans, they win Florida and we have absentee ballot. This is not the same thing. This is not the same thing. We have verification standards here. We prohibit ballot harvesting. Activists are not allowed to go and collect loose ballots and then run them back to an ideologically corrupt Secretary of Elections or county registrar, whatever you call it in your area, and then ring up loose votes. Because that is absolutely going to happen. There are already people around this country in wards all over PA, all over in place like Fairfax County, Virginia, where they ring up votes. There was just an indictment a few weeks ago. It was an election judge. The political consultant is cooperating with the FBI because that judge is not the only one he had doing it. All to the favor, by the way, of Democratic candidates. And I'm not saying Republicans don't cheat. They just don't cheat on the level that Democrats cheat. This is not partisan. You should want to win an election fairly. Doesn't matter what party you're in. If your side cheats, you should be pissed. Why? Because first of all, look at what they did with Russia collusion after 2016. That was a hoax. But they were able to sow doubt in the minds of millions of Americans as to whether Donald Trump was a legitimate president or not. Representative John Lewis, a so-called civil rights hero, called him illegitimate. Then later, the Speaker of the House would later call him illegitimate. Look at the chaos we have been dealing with over the last 3.5 years. Election integrity is paramount. It is the most important thing in our election system. This is not about absentee ballot voting, access to absentee ballot voting. I've gone over the voter files with you. And again, if Joe Biden was so far ahead and Pennsylvania was lost to Donald Trump, why the hell do you feel the need to do this? Specifically, the need to do this in areas where Joe Biden has not made inroads with those working voters? I would encourage you to take a second later or whenever you have time, go to People's Pundit Daily and type in Rust Belt Revolution in the search bar. I've gone over this article with you on the show before. Judging by the audience today, I'm sure many of you missed it. Check it out and you will see. There is absolute, the way the trends are going, they could absolutely see Joe Biden come out of Philadelphia and the surrounding area with an 800,000 vote lead. Okay, something that Hillary Clinton even topped. All right, in 2016, Clinton came out of that area with a larger rollout of Philadelphia than Obama in the Philadelphia area. She came out of there with 475,000 vote margin. And then in the suburbs, she tacked on almost 190,000 more and added almost 110,000 more in Allegheny. Taken together, she stomped Obama's margin in the Democratic areas. In 2012, Obama came out of those areas combined with 706,000 plus votes. Hillary Clinton came out of them with 771,000 plus. It looked insurmountable. But because of the trends and because of the margins, it wasn't only the margins, too. It was the rate, the amount of votes that came out of those areas. That they just hadn't ever seen a Republican vote like that in those areas. Mitt Romney sure as hell couldn't do it. He crushed Mitt Romney's numbers. And my point being, there's about 100, with turnout and trend, Joe Biden should come out of there with close to like 800,000 combined. The stronghold margin. But there's 100,000 of these ballots in Philadelphia alone. We went over that in the Pennsylvania voter fraud episode. 100,000 alone. Tack on Allegheny County, it's 180,000. That's a lot of votes. That's a lot of loose ballots to ring up. And these problems tend to disproportionately favor Democrats. Just like in Clark County, nearly 7 in 10 of all votes cast in that state, Nevada, come out of Clark County. Statewide, only a little over 200,000 potential loose ballots. 80,000 of them, Clark County. It's disproportionate to the problem, is my point. The Democratic areas are disproportionately responsible for the problem. But that also means it's disproportionately more of a benefit to them or anyone who seeks to undermine election integrity. There is no good explanation for them wanting to remove the verification standards. There is no good explanation for them to want everybody to receive a ballot, whether they requested it or not. Plus, removing the verification standards, plus having an army of ballot harvesters, whether it's legal or not in that state, going out to gather up these loose ballots. There is only one explanation. You want to cheat. You want to cheat. Why? You're 10 points ahead. You're 10 points ahead. Why do you need to cheat? There's no other explanation. None. And this lawsuit, it's a good start. Previously, Republicans did win a pretty big lawsuit in Pennsylvania. Democrats had filed their own, and they've been all over the country pressuring state secretaries of state and attorney generals, state attorney generals. They've been pressuring them all over in the battlegrounds to change these things without votes, not through the legislative process signed by the governor, through fiat, through executive fiat. Some of them, they've managed to do it. Others, they had to sue. And Republicans did win the last lawsuit in Pennsylvania, and that one was for counting ballots after Election Day. And I don't mean counting ballots that were there and then, committees have to go over it. No. I'm talking about ballots that arrive after Election Day. Why not? As long as they're postmarked the day before the election, like we saw in Kentucky. As long as they're postmarked the day of, whatever it may be, whatever their deadline is. You have to be stupid not to understand what's going on. You mean as long as the ballot harvester scribbled the correct date on there? Come on. This is crap. There is only one reason why you would do this. That is because you want to cheat. End of story. And by the way, Trump's total vote share in that area that we were talking about before over Romney. Again, go to Rust Belt Revolution. Just type Rust Belt Revolution in the search bar on People's Pundit Daily. It will come out inside Donald Trump's Rust Belt Revolution. In different areas, we break down Pennsylvania in great detail. Which ones are Appalachia counties? Which ones are not? How many of the total 67, I think it is? How many of the total 67 counties in the state of Pennsylvania are, or 69? That's off the top of my head. How many are Appalachia? How many outside of Philadelphia and Allegheny did Barack Obama carry that flipped to Donald Trump? By what margins? And when you cobble them together, the outside Allegheny, Philadelphia vote, how much better did Trump do versus Mitt Romney? It mattered. Not only did those margins matter, but the number of votes that came out of there mattered. And by the way, this will just present these proposals and have already presented massive problems. There are going to be stories of people like you who will go and try to get your vote, and your vote will already have been claimed. You've been sent out, some ballot harvester would have returned it. That's going to happen. And they will force you, maybe if you're lucky, to vote with a provisional ballot. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. All right. And then also, great article, because I know we're coming up on this first hour break, and I want to get to the economic indicators. Great article in the Center for Politics about Pennsylvania and what I'm talking about today. I think it's the first of a series they're calling States of Play or State of Play. And they'll explain this to you. This is what I'm talking about. Now, I will say this. That said, while it's dead on, and I'm reading it earlier this morning, and I'm thinking, I think he read Inside Donald Trump's Rust Belt Revolution, because, I mean, it's dead on for what we're talking about in that article, which was written right after the 2016 election. I wrote that after I got the final numbers for each of these states. The conclusion was, because of these trends, Donald Trump just beat her. In every state but Michigan, he just beat her. That's it. And that this was likely to continue in a state like Pennsylvania. And the conclusion here is the same one. Regardless of what the polls say, go back and you will see Hillary Clinton had a very big lead in the state of Pennsylvania right now. One poll, Quinnipiac had like Trump up by 1 or something. That was an early poll, but then that evaporated. And it gave way to Clinton +6, Clinton +8, Franklin and Marshall, Clinton +1,000,000. And on election day before, about a week or two before, it really started to tighten. And I'm trying to tell you folks that never was really the case. It was always a tight race. Pennsylvania was tight. He got those undecideds at the end. But what he really did was exacerbate a trend. That's the takeaway. And I argued that Pennsylvania may get harder for Democrats as time goes on. In 2018, they did very well. So that kind of snuffed out that conversation. But here, they are returning to it as well. Because overall, if you look at the long-term trends, that trend has continued. And Trump was not on the ballot in 2018. Just like Barack Obama was not on the ballot in 2010. They are very different races. You will not find me a midterm where turnout in that midterm was a predictive indicator of the subsequent presidential election. Basically, the one real, the one example that bucks the trend there was 9/11, the 2002 midterms. But it was a very different scenario. And while Trump has, continued to, or Republicans in general, have continued to erode in support in some of these areas that McCain carried, Mitt Romney barely carried 500 and something votes in the one county they make a hay over. Trump's margins and the Republican gains, registration-wise, have in the rest of the state have offset that. And the result is a net loss in registration edge for Democrats. It makes for a much tighter race. The point I'm trying to make makes for a much tighter race than the media is trying to tell you right now. All right. Trump carried 56 out of the 61 of those counties that I was trying to talk about before. All right, let's get ready for a break. When we come back from the break, I want to blow through some economic stuff, and then I want to fact check. Speaking of Joe Biden, I want to fact check Joe on a comment he made during his fundraiser, which was not true. And nobody's going to fact check this guy, I guess. But it's important because it matters to your wages. If you like wage growth, it matters. And we have to talk about this stuff. And I will just say this about the article I'm telling you guys to read on Center for Politics. He focuses heavily on Bill Weld's, and I don't think I got into this that much, but the 8% that Bill Weld took from Donald Trump got about 92%. Well, I'd rather get 92% than 76% or something around what Joe Biden got in the primary. Because Donald Trump lost a similar amount of his base in 2016. But he won 12, 13% of the Democratic base. 12 to 13% of more is greater than 6 to 8% of less. And on net, that will be a net gain in the partisan-only vote for Donald Trump. And then he slightly carried independents. Independents in Pennsylvania, very small percentage. They could be as low as 17, 18% of the electorate. 20%, is a beefy one. They have grown in recent years. That has grown, but they're still, compared to other states, very, very small percentage compared to some of the other battleground states. All right. I will read some of the questions. When we come back, we'll get into that Biden tax cut thing, all right? And then we will look at some of the news that we missed, all right? All really. One is the fact check surrounds Joe Biden, and then the big story that I would have went over with you on Monday, which is an article on PPD. I will get to that too, because I would have went over it yesterday. I think it's important, and we'll play the Imagine If game together, all right? It is 11:02. You're watching Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I am the People's Pundit, Rich Barris. Follow me on Twitter right there at People's_Pundit if you don't already. Catch you on 2 minutes after the break.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love. Because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
We can get on a plane and take a one-way ride. Steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to spear for a knife. So give in to the need and leave it all behind.
'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
All right, we're back. It is 11:05. We're back from the break. Thanks for watching Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I am the People's Pundit, Rich Barris. You guys can follow me right there on Twitter if you don't already, at Peoples_Pundit. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel for People's Pundit Daily and hit the little notification bell, and that will let you know when we're about to go live. If you saw, it happened to you yesterday, then you know why that's important. Also, don't forget to like the page, People's Pundit Daily, on Facebook. If you are a Facebook user, mosey on over there and like the page. We'll love you for it. All right. And then ultimately, the best way, of course, to support the show is to subscribe to peoplespunditdaily.com, which you can do by going to ppdnews.us/subscribe. ppdnews.us/subscribe. We'll love you for it as well. Again, real quick, last week was a nice week, and we want to tell you that we recognize and appreciate you. All right? Listen, we went over this Biden thing. I just want to do this. I just want to play this real quick before we go into the other stories. Like I said, in 2016, I think that you could break down a lot of the pollsters' issues to a few things. Their data collection modes suck. They're archaic, and they need to be updated, all right, because they poll for big media outlets, and it's big industry. Live caller is big money. So they can, they want to do that, and it's hard to break the boys club in that fashion. A lot of it came down to their lack of diversity and data collection methods. So they did not reach everybody, including those people that we did reach when we asked whether or not you had voted in elections in the last 10 years. And those low turnout, low propensity voters were heavily favoring Donald Trump. They missed them. And then also, they did not wait correctly or at all for region and education. They're doing a little bit better with education. They still suck waiting for region. They are not reaching those voters that we were just telling you about. That's how they didn't know that surge in Western Pennsylvania was going to overtake Hillary Clinton's 771,000 plus vote margin lead, her buffer, out of Philadelphia and Allegheny. They looked at that early on election night and they said, oh, Trump's finished. We saw it everywhere. Broward County. She cranked out more votes than Obama twice. Everybody looked, including Frank Luntz. Remember that tweet? Remember Sky News? They had to undo their election call. Hillary Clinton's won the state of Florida. And I'm like, here comes the red counter hook, the counterpunch. The red hook is coming. These margins are huge. You're shooting it too early. And they were wrong. And they looked foolish. All right? And I just want to point that out because I want to play this clip before we move on. Tom Bevan, Real Clear Politics. I want to give this guy a little bit of kudos here. He interviewed Patrick Cahaly from Trafalgar and noted that he was one of the few that got it right. He's got Trump up a little bit, I think, in PA and down a little bit in Wisconsin or whatever it is. They're very close. Biden and Trump, very tight. I will say this. The advantage for Biden that we see so far, a little bit more because I think Patrick's got a little bit too few young voters in there. Hell, I could be wrong. Maybe those young voters don't come out for Biden at all. But our likely voter screen will get tighter. So maybe we will see that. But Matt Bevan on Fox News talking about the shy Trump voter.
Those two most recent polls, as you mentioned, one was a Democratic poll done in conjunction with CNBC that had it a 2-point race. And then late last week, we had a poll from the Trafalgar Group showing it a 1-point race. Now, the Trafalgar Group, the pollster there is Robert Haley. He's the only guy who had Trump winning in Michigan in 2016. He's the only pollster that showed Trump winning in Pennsylvania in 2016. And so I think we have to pay attention to that. Because all the other pollsters sort of missed the boat, but he did not. And he uses a sort of unique methodology. And I spoke to him. I actually interviewed him on the phone last week to talk through the numbers with him, what he was seeing. And he said he sees this race as very, very close. Another interesting point that he made, Sean, was that he is seeing the social desirability bias, the idea that respondents aren't telling pollsters the truth about who they're going to vote for because they don't want to be judged. In other words, these are the shy Trumpers, the reluctant Trump voters. He said that he's seeing that it's stronger this time around than it was 4 years ago.
I would agree with that. I would, however, say, Matt, that having subsamples of panels in national polling does not exclude, all right? And that is what we did, all right? In 2016, this is the only guy. Patrick did not poll nationally. That's not really true. It's just the only one you chose to pay attention to, all right? What we did was a little bit different. So large national poll, any given moment, any given day, 3-day rolling average was the national number. And then within that, typically it was 5 to 7 days, depending on the state. The subsample from each state was our state level polling. So if it was each, by the way, there were minimal standards for each. So Florida is a much bigger state. So, looking at 9 million votes, whatever may come out of there at any given time. So the sample had to be 800, 700, whatever. Michigan could be a smaller sample. Michigan, I will say, margin for error, I think was the name of it, John Sikowitz, Detroit Business Journal. After 2016, we talked to him about what we did a little bit differently. And Mitchell, who does Mitchell Research, was the pollster basically most media outlets listened to in Michigan. He got it terribly wrong. It was like Clinton +6 or something, his final. And it was wrong. And it was wrong because a few reasons. He did not catch that move, which was a kind of a late move among older white Democrats who were undecided. They went for Trump. Independents went heavily, who were older white independents. And then his sample was a little bit too much young. So while I'm criticizing Pat, you're not criticizing. I'm just saying his numbers look a little bit too old for me. I think 6% is a little bit low for 18 to 29. But it is possible because Mitchell was way too much. It is possible that it's somewhere in the middle there, or that younger voters are just not keen on Joe Biden. Joe Biden, even when he had this consolidation, he never really hit that threshold with young voters at all. I mean, he really didn't bring any young voters into the mix. Bernie got them, including whether or not they were white, black, Hispanic. It didn't really matter. Bernie Sanders did very well with them. And basically, Joe Biden has no appeal with them. And that's another. So the question mark, black voters, and the question mark, of course, is young voters. Will they come out for Joe Biden? The polls, same thing with Hillary Clinton. They said, I'll vote for Hillary Clinton. The polls included a normal turnout. And that didn't happen. CNN's poll, which showed Biden ahead, was very weird. Donald Trump was doing very strong. He was performing strongly. I don't know if that's statistical noise or not. But let's move on to a story that basically I would have covered if we were going to do this on Monday. And because we didn't, I didn't, right? So if you guys want to check out PPD, you'll see Joe Biden's, well, there's two about Joe Biden. One is his tax plan. If we have time, I'll go over that. But the first one had to do with Joe Biden being, certain prominent role in these new unsealed federal court filings from the Michael Flynn investigation. If this was, here's the time for the imagine if game. Imagine if Donald Trump's name was scribbled in the margins, being identified as the person who came up with an idea behind a corrupt investigation. So they were using Ambassador Sondland and Taylor. They were using their notes during the impeachment process as contemporaneous evidence, and they weren't really that convincing. Here we have Peter Strzok, and this is from Peter Strzok again, documenting his meetings with, the White House. It was that infamous now January 5th meeting, the day before the feedback that he was getting, even during, and he had been the point man on the Clinton email investigation. So the White House at this point would be very familiar with him, of course. Lisa Page and him talking back and forth about that investigation is where we have that initial text that said POTUS wants to be included on everything. The point of this new trove, this new tranche that we got, is that Joe Biden was not being truthful when he told Joe Stephanopoulos that he really had nothing to do with the Michael Flynn investigation, which, of course, Crossfire Razor and Crossfire Hurricane would later lead to special counsel Robert Mueller. If they had the wealth now of evidence on Donald Trump that they had on Joe Biden, it would be open and shut, 24/7 coverage, push for impeachment. 20 Republican senators would have collapsed. But it's Joe Biden. So they're effectively ignoring the story. And I think it's important because Joe Biden seems to play like this, innocent, just foolish uncle figure who doesn't really know. I'm there on the periphery. But when we actually dig into these stories, he winds up being the central figure in a lot of them. It's not Barack Obama's voice recorded in the audio with former Ukraine president, corrupt president Petro Poroshenko. It's Joe Biden's voice talking about firing Viktor Shokin in exchange for the money. It's Joe Biden's voice talking about going after the Russians' opposition to Poroshenko. It's Joe Biden's voice talking about taking money from a group that they knew was a corrupt gas company. And now here we have again Joe Biden's name scribbled in the margins. And I want to, let me try to see if I can have you guys read along with me on this because it's important. And you should at least see what I'm saying. All right. Me. Unsealed documents further implicate Joe Biden in Michael Flynn investigation. Joe Biden appears not to have been truthful, was directly involved in the persecution of Michael Flynn. Newly unsealed documents further implicate Joe Biden in the inappropriate, I was being nice, but inappropriate investigation into former National Security Advisor, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. Indeed, Mr. Biden appears to have, quote, personally raised the idea, unquote, of using the Logan Act, which Jonathan Turley, liberal law professor himself, said was corrupt, politically corrupt. And the use of the Logan Act only confirms it. The court filings include handwritten notes from now disgraced and fired FBI agent Peter Strzok. They detail how the investigation, dubbed Crossfire Razor, was ordered by then President Barack Obama, and the strategy was engineered by Mr. Biden in the Oval Office on January 5th, 2017. A partially redacted copy of the notes attached to the filing includes a mention that appears to say VP Logan Act. This document also revealed Mr. Obama told top administration officials that the, quote, the right people should investigate Lieutenant General Flynn, who also served as the Director of National Intelligence under the former president. Listen, when we're talking about Michael Flynn and what the Obama administration did to him, we cannot get over two things. One, he opposed the secret dealings with Iran, which the Obama administration was lying to the American people about. He knows a lot about that deal that the Obama administration does not want everyone to know. And secondly, he refused to lie in intelligence reports or allow intelligence to be skewed when it came to the rise of ISIS. The Obama administration wanted basically to fudge or twist intelligence to make it sound as if ISIS was not a rising threat. And Michael Flynn would not get on board with this. This is very important to remember. So people always ask me, why did they hate Michael Flynn so much? By all accounts, he can be a little bit difficult to get along with, or at least by all accounts from them. But that's not why. He would not play ball. All right. Here's Strzok's little handwritten notes. As we can see, it's partially redacted. There is where it says VP Logan Act right there. All right. I mean, this is not the first piece of this puzzle. This is not even the first piece of damning evidence. And by the way, this stuff was withheld. According to Strzok's notes, it appears that Vice President Biden personally raised the idea of the Logan Act. Defense lawyers, Sidney Powell wrote in the filing. Last week, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia ordered District Judge Emmett Sullivan to approve the Justice Department's motion to dismiss the case against Lieutenant General Flynn. The 2-1 ruling granted a writ of mandamus, basically an order for a government official to carry out their duty. In May, the DOJ revealed it was dropping the case. It came after, quote, newly discovered and disclosed information, unquote, that raised serious questions about the nature of the investigation, which led to Special Counsel Robert Mueller. Of the initial 2 tranches of documents totaling 15 pages, the first 4 unsealed pages contain clear evidence. The investigation and persecution, again codenamed Crossfire Razor, was a setup for a perjury trap. The documents, inappropriately withheld from the defense, contain handwritten notes from Bill Priestap, then Assistant Director of the Counterintelligence Division for the FBI. Worth noting, Peter Strzok was also counterintel. The note states agents aimed, quote, to get Flynn to lie so we can prosecute him or get him fired, unquote. On January 24th, and they say him, Flynn is in, brackets. On July 24, 2017, federal agents interviewed Lieutenant General Flynn under false pretenses and without counsel about a conversation he had with Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak. I know a lot of you know this. Just bear with me because you're getting to new stuff. At the time of the conversation, Lieutenant General Flynn was the top foreign policy advisor to the then president-elect. The note taker wrote that one objective of the interview was to get him to admit to breaking the Logan Act, a 1799 law widely viewed as unconstitutional. And while we got these notes from Priestap, it's like, who came up with this idea? Lawyers on the left, Dershowitz, Turley, bashing this. On the right, certainly bashing it. The use of the Logan Act was a red flag that this was an inappropriate, corrupt investigation. But before we got this, the only evidence we had was that maybe this just was a creation of the FBI. A few corrupt actors, right? That's what we're told. Just a few bad apples. And I'd agree with that. The rank and file of the FBI, I have the utmost respect for. I really do. Most of them don't. You kidding me? A lot of what we know are from people who are disgusted by this. But did the idea come from them? It appears not. And if they had this much evidence against Donald Trump, the roles were reversed, they'd be crucified by now. Are you kidding me? The Logan Act intends to, by the way, is widely viewed as unconstitutional. It intends to prohibit private citizens from having, quote, any correspondence or intercourse with any foreign government, unquote, about official U.S. policy. It has only led to 2 indictments, one in 1803 and another in 1852. The law has never successfully been used in a prosecution against anyone, ever. And by the way, 1799, this was aimed at the era of not having a cell phone, a telephone, anything, instant wire. This was aimed at people basically impersonating U.S. diplomats. But Judge Sullivan refused and took an unusual, unprecedented steps to keep the case from being dismissed. Defense counsel responded by asking the U.S. Court of Appeals in D.C. for the writ of mandamus, which was granted. Earlier in June, DNI head John Ratcliffe made public the transcripts from the wiretapped calls between Lieutenant General Flynn and Ambassador Kislyak. It's linked here, and you guys can read them yourselves. Even fired former FBI Director James Comey acknowledged in these meetings. The calls with Ambassador Kislyak, quote, appear legit, but it didn't stop the previous administration from using Mr. Biden's idea, which was to use the Logan Act, as if he was a private citizen. It doesn't apply in any measure. One, he was already the incoming national security advisor. He was not a private citizen impersonating a diplomat, which is what the Logan Act is for. In May, former acting DNI Richard Grenell declassified a list of Obama administration officials who sought to unmask Lieutenant General Flynn. It included Mr. Biden on numerous occasions, before and after the phone calls with Ambassador Kislyak. These requests were made. The declassified list was the first indication Mr. Biden was not being truthful when asked about his knowledge of the now disgraced investigation. In an interview with George Stephanopoulos, a Clintonite who owes his job to the Clintons, a political operative pretending to be a journalist, in an interview with that George Stephanopoulos on Good Morning America, he denied knowing anything about it. Quote, I know nothing about those moves to investigate Michael Flynn, unquote. That is what Biden told George Stephanopoulos. In fact, he did. Not only did he know about them, his code was used to unmask Michael Flynn. It was apparently, since contemporaneous notes are supposed to be taken as gospel, that's what we were told during both the witch hunt and Ukraine, the impeachment. Well, if contemporaneous notes are gospel, then not only did he lie about not knowing anything about it, it was his damn idea. Given the declassified list and now the newly unsealed documents, it's clear that was not the case. In fact, the administration submitted unmasking requests on numerous occasions before the call with Ambassador Kislyak. The list also names former Central Intelligence Agency Director John Brennan, former DNI James Clapper, former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations Samantha Powers, who, by the way, was the most historic unmasker ever. We learned that from the released transcripts of the House Intelligence Committee's investigation into Russia collusion. Samantha Powers, which is not an appropriate role to unmasked more than anyone else. And the last one on the list, Mr. Comey himself. Of note regarding the list are both the sheer number of unmasking requests submitted to the National Security Agency and the dates those requests were made. The request for Mr. Biden on January 12th, 2017 was made the same day David Ignatius revealed content of the leaked transcripts to the Washington Post. The request by Chief of Staff McDonough was made on January 5th, 2017. Also the same day, the now infamous meeting, which was memorialized in an email by Susan Rice. The White House meeting with the president, the vice president, Comey, Rice. Previously obtained text messages between Mr. Strzok and Mr. Page shed light on and raise questions over Mr. Obama's role in and knowledge of these controversial investigations. Ms. Page wrote to Mr. Strzok on September 2nd, 2016, as she was preparing talking points on the handling of the Clinton email investigation. POTUS wants to know everything we're doing. In May 2019, as we all know now, Attorney General William Barr assigned U.S. Attorney John Durham in Connecticut to investigate the origins of and potential wrongdoings in the probe. Look, Barr already came out and said that Joe Biden wouldn't be a target of this investigation, right? He already said that. So this information's coming out and he's already off the hook. If the roles were reversed, do you think with this evidence, an Eric Holder or a Loretta Lynch would let him off the hook? Oh, I think not. Oh, no. No way. This is damning. And if it wasn't, he would have told George Stephanopoulos the truth. But he lied. Because that's what politicians do when they've done something wrong. And they're trying to get away with it. All right? All right, it is almost time. I wanted to get that out there. It's important. It's, of course, important to know context. And just to answer one of the questions in the thing from Aussie Nick, that's true. She claims many of those requests, and we're talking about Samantha Powers, she didn't make. And someone can use your code to make unmasking requests. But none of this is, one, appropriate, or two, common. So they're asking us to believe something that's a bit ridiculous. And first of all, it is not the UN ambassador's role to unmask like this. It is not. Now, I can't say there's no instance of it, but it doesn't, the sheer number and the dates, it's a little, it stinks to high heaven. It stinks to high heaven. That's all, but all right. I wanted to talk about that because more is going to drip out. More will come out. All right. It's 11:31 after my quick little spiel. Let's roll through some economic indicators. Shows more of these. All right. And that's why they want to shut the economy down again. And everyone's hyperventilating over 18 to 35-year-olds getting coronavirus, right? Everyone's hyperventilating. They don't give a damn about people getting sick. The economy, they're terrified. The economy is going to come roaring back and independence will swing back to Trump. Terrified. They don't give a rat's about your grandmother or your kids. If they cared about your grandmother, they'd be smoking Andrew Cuomo right now and Tom Wolf and Murphy in Jersey for issuing orders that killed old people. They didn't care about any of this when the protests go on. They didn't care about it weeks ago. They don't care about it now when crowds of mobs are trying to tear down monuments. They care because the economy is roaring back faster and stronger than anybody thought. And they know what I know, which is that incumbent presidents do not lose in strong economies. All right, let's get the spiel out of the way and take a look at some more economic indicators. All right, it is 11:32 on Tuesday, the last day in June, folks. We're burning towards the 4th of July. Thanks for watching Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I am the People's Pundit, Rich Barris. Follow me on Twitter if you don't already, at Peoples_Pundit. Like the page, Facebook, if you're a Facebook user. Mosey on over to People's Pundit Daily and give it a like. Also, of course, on YouTube. Don't forget before you go to subscribe to People's Pundit Daily on YouTube and hit the little notification bell so it'll let you know when we're going on and you don't miss any of our great show. All right. And then, of course, the best way to support the show is to subscribe to People's Pundit Daily, which you could do by going to ppdnews.us/subscribe. ppdnews.us/subscribe. All right. And again, I want to make it a point throughout the show. We had a good week to thank everybody for doing so. Not just last week, but all throughout. We recognize it. We see it. We love you for it. All right. Anyway, let's get back into it now. All right. Last thing, I want to burn through a couple economic indicators. Really good news yesterday, and we missed you. I would have went over it on the show yesterday had we had it, but we didn't. You know what? Without pulling it up, I'll show you the static image. Is that cool? If I don't show you guys the interactive chart. Let's start first with the Texas Manufacturing Outlook Survey. Rebounded strongly. The Texas manufacturing surges as production, outlook, and wages return to positive territory. All of this is in the YouTube description. You guys can, of course, read it on PPD. The Texas Manufacturing Outlook Survey rebounded strongly in June for more than expected after posting record or near record declines for the last 2 months. The Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas reported the key production index soared from -28 to 13.6. Now, that may not sound like a very big reading to you guys, but let me see if I can pull it up. Where is the boom? Is that the right one? Yep. All right. So there you can see, and I don't have to show you the whole thing. There you can see the clear V shape. All right. It's almost returned. It has in many instances. If you look at, it's above the key production index is above the levels in July 2019. It's good news. The general business activity index rose, and I mean rose, from negative 49.2 to negative 6.1 after rising from negative 74 in May. Forecasts range from a low of negative 35 to a high of negative 5, but the consensus was negative 26. So obviously not only a beat, a strong beat. The company outlook index climbed back into positive territory. And I'm going to, where are we here? Yep, back in a positive territory. Negative 34.6 to 2.7. 29% of manufacturing firms noting improved outlooks, up from just 12% last month. The wages and benefits index also returned to positive territory at 6.8. Why does this matter? That's why in the jobs report, wages were outsized growth that first month during COVID, because we saw a lot of the leisure and hospitality, lower paying jobs get pushed out of the equation. And then the following month, we got a huge jobs report, but then wages kind of sank. And that's because, not just because some of them came back, but because some of these other jobs there had dipped as well. And seeing the wages and benefits index rise again in these surveys is a pretty good indicator that we could see some better numbers for this sector, which pays, of course, a lot more. So that will also create upward pressure on wages. All right. Data for this was collected June 16th to 24th, and 115 Texas manufacturers responded to the survey. The next release is Monday, July 27th. Before I burn through this, because I got a lot to cover in the last 25 minutes, regionally, the Texas Manufacturing Outlook Survey is one of several regional surveys of factory activity by their respected Federal Reserve Bank. The Federal Reserve reported total industrial production rose 1.4% in May, but that was on the back of manufacturing growth after posting the largest monthly drop in the 100-year history of the survey. That was for April. The New York Federal Reserve Empire State Manufacturing Survey rose 48 points in June to negative 0.2. And optimism soared to the highest level in over a decade. That means when we get this next survey, it's going to be gangbuster. Unless Cuomo kills it, because he's good at killing things and people. While the General Conditions Index remains slightly negative, it's far off the all-time low recorded in April. The Philadelphia Fed, that's the Manufacturing Business Outlook Survey for the Northeast, Mid-Atlantic, unexpectedly rebounded strongly in June, off the low in April. The Diffusion Index for current general activity soared from negative 43.1 in May to positive 27.5, the first positive reading since February. Which leads me, with 20 minutes left, and maybe this will leave a little bit for questions. All right. Maybe one or two, Madam Producer. All right. Or two or three. I'll try to get through as much as I can. Oh, one more, right? Before we circle into what could harm this recovery, let me get to pending home sales real quick. All right. This was huge. I can't miss a record. This is a record, so I can't miss a record. Pending home sales soared 44.3% in May. That is the largest gain ever recorded. They posted a record gain, recovering far more than the record loss in April. The NAR, the National Association of Realtors, reported pending home sales recovered both in month over month and year over year with contract activity. Every major region across the board, and is a post-COVID shutdown rebound. The pending home sales index, like I said, rose 44.3% to 99.6 in May, the largest gain ever since the series started in January 2001. Year over year, contract signings are still down 5.1%, but that is a vast improvement. Here's what Lauren June, who's the chief economist at NAR, said. This has been a spectacular recovery for contract signings and goes to show the resiliency of American consumers and their evergreen desire for home ownership. This bounce back also speaks to how the housing sector could lead the way for broader economic recovery. Listen, I'm telling you, this is what we're hearing from everybody. Housing was that fourth cylinder under the Trump boom that just was not firing strongly. And just as this damn year started, it did. You could see it in housing starts, in groundbreaking, and building permits, and completions a lag, but even they were on the rise. You could see it. Builder confidence was soaring in the market for single-family homes, but we weren't seeing it in that new construction data until the turn of the year. And then the COVID thing happened. And then Democrats and their friends in the media used it to destroy the economy, or try to destroy the economy. And now here we have housing. Like Yoon says, this is the beauty of America. This is really the true beauty of America. The ethic, the dreaming, it turns into this resiliency, this resolve. It manifests into it. It's beautiful. No other country does this. No other country can do this. Forecasts range from a low of 6.8 to a high of 25%. So the actual reading, the gain was almost double the high end. The consensus was only 11.3%. It was 4 times that, just about. An index of 100 is equal to the level of contract activity in January 2001 when the index started. Here's Yoon again. More listings are continuously appearing as the economy reopens, helping with inventory choices. Still, more home construction is needed to counter the persistent underproduction of homes over the past decade. Like I said, this was not an inherent Trump issue. The Obama recovery from what was a housing-caused recession was the weakest recovery since the Second World War. We never really recovered. Not in wage growth. Replacing good-paying jobs with flipping burgers is not recovery. The housing market sucked under him. The housing risk index soared because they were doing, again, the same thing that led to the crisis in the first place. Loosen lending restrictions, make it easy for people who really cannot afford homes to buy homes. And we were just waiting for it. Waiting for that last fourth cylinder, because the problem Obama had, his unemployment numbers may have came down, but his labor participation was abysmal. It was a methodological gimmick. The declining unemployment rate under Barack Obama was a methodological gimmick. It was because of labor force participation being weak, period. Under Trump, the numbers were coming down. Unemployment numbers were coming down, but labor participation was still rising. That's the sign of a truly tight labor market, which is why initial jobless claims were hitting all-time lows, historic lows. All of that created upward pressure on wages. Wage growth leads to home ownership. You guys see the path, the pipeline? That's the pipeline of prosperity right there. The pipeline for the American dream. So it was inevitable, and we were waiting on it. And pre-COVID, it was coming. And now this thing is, everyone we're talking to, housing's going to lead the bounce back. Housing's going to lead the bounce back. But only if they don't kill it. Only if they don't start with their calls for shutdowns. Succeed in prolonged pauses of reopenings. They do not want this. NAR now expects existing home sales to hit 4.9 million units in 2020 and new home sales to hit 490,000. I got news for you. That's going to happen. Mr. Yoon said sales are forecast to rise 5.35 million units for existing home sales and 800,000 for new home sales in 2021. That's another thing. New home sales, lucky to be in the 5s under Obama. With Trump, they were in the 7s several times. All right. Barring no large change in public policy was a big caveat. These are the forecasts barring no big change in public policy. Pending home sales regionally, and actually let's show you the last, because this is going to show, there's your last V. Here's the pending home sales index. Gold is nationally, and the rest are regions. And obviously, you can see what is a very clear V-shaped recovery in the pending home sales. All right? But let's get back to it, wrap it up, and then let's talk about those big shift changes before this time runs out. In May, each of the 4 regional indicators posted month-over-month gains. After all, were down in April. The Northeast rocketed 44.4% to 61.5%. That is the weakest region in the country, as I have told you before. The Northeast and the Midwest, once rich in electoral votes because of population, are now what are viewed to be economically the depressed areas of the country. Very sad story. In the Midwest, the index soared 37.2% to 98.8. Now down only 1.4% from the year over year, May 2019. In the South, pending home sales shot 43.3% higher to 125.5. They're now up 1.9% year over year. The index in the West, 56.2% gain to 89.2. The South is the strongest region. That's a flip from pre-Civil War, folks, right? They better watch that. But they're still down. Sales in May are still down, but by far less than they were in April, 2.5% for the year over year I'm talking about. Housing set to lead rebound if allowed, if calls for a prolonged pausing of states' economies, let alone shutting them down again, succeed. The nation's economic rebound could be jeopardized. As of now, housing is set to lead the V-shaped recovery. New home sales unexpectedly soared 16.6% to 676. What did you just, that's an annualized rate, by the way. Look at what Yoon said, 690. We're almost there. That's in May, easily beating the consensus. Wait till June with some of these numbers with the contract signings. This month of April was revised down to a rate of 580 when most businesses and governments were operating on a limited capacity or had ceased operations totally. The National Association of Home Builders, which is also in conjunction with Wells Fargo, the Housing Market Index, the HMI, reported builder confidence unexpectedly surged 21 points to 58 in June. New residential construction statistics for housing starts and building permits rose in May despite the lingering effects due to COVID-19. If allowed, the economy will come roaring back. That is the moral of this story. And they will now, of course, you're hearing the calls. It is like predictable. Is anyone surprised by this? Is anybody shocked that this recovery is coming back faster and stronger than believed to be before? Furman, we went over that, remember? Furman was telling the Biden people and Democrats, don't talk about the economy yet. The foundation was strong, and if it comes roaring back, you're going to look stupid. They saw that jobs report and had a coronary. And if they get their way, they will do it again. They will. If you don't think, look, when this show first started, I told you guys not to support these shutdowns because they will use them as a political tool. First of all, there was no data to make any kind of bold, rash, off-the-cuff, knee-jerk, ahistorical decision like that. Crisis thinking is loser think. And they will use it as a political weapon. And that Democratic governors would absolutely abuse their authority to make it hurt. We can go over the numbers, the unemployment numbers again if you'd like. 2 of the top 3 high unemployment because of COVID, during COVID, were in Michigan because of Hitmore. She did that. That was not natural. She caused that. They have real consequences. And they will use this again. They will try it again. They are already trying it again because they see this economy coming back strong. And we can actually see the impact of that in the jobless numbers. Joe Biden the other day, holding a virtual town hall, which is one of the last things I want to get to. Okay. The other day, Joe Biden holding a virtual town hall said two things. One, that he would roll back the president's Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. One of the main reasons why we are bouncing back so quickly. He created, Donald, between deregulation and the first revamping, updating, modernizing of the tax code in 31 years, Donald Trump got passed as a signature legislation. He created the environment for that beautiful, what we were just talking about, what Mr. Yoon at the National Association of Realtors was talking about, this beautiful spirit that Americans have, this tendency for prosperity, this resolve, this economic resolve and ingenuity. It's beautiful. All Donald Trump did was get the hell out of the way, foster an environment that allows it to prosper. And Joe Biden said, one, he will repeal the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, despite the wage gains we've seen since then. And two, that the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act blew $1 trillion hole in the deficit. This guy comes up with these numbers and he drives me crazy because it's just, none of it's true. He comes up with these crazy numbers like 120 million dead people.
Unnecessarily, now we have over 120 million dead from COVID.
Same thing, same deal. 120 million dead from COVID, 150 million dead from gun violence, $1 trillion holes in the deficit from the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. That is absolutely not true. And if we were to do what Joe Biden proposes us to do, it would slice almost 2% off of GDP, which would kill our recovery. And according to the Tax Foundation, they're a little bit better. Their results are a little bit better. They still say it'll stifle and kill wages. But our own analysis showed it around 33%, about a third, slicing about a third of wage growth off would be probably generous. We're probably being generous. And there's a reason for that. First of all, to deal with his first claim, critics during the debate of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, all right, initially said it would lead to billions in deficits. And they cited the static scoring from the Congressional Budget Office, the CBO. Some of those critics have been forced to issue corrections, including the New York Times, but others have not. The CBO static scores. Even when they've tried to dynamically score, they suck at it. They are not good at it because they don't understand the free market. They are bureaucrats, big government bureaucrats. They are economically illiterate. But even when they did the math in the recent budget outlook, they found the TCJA not only did not add to the federal deficit like Joe Biden just claimed in his fundraiser, but the resulting revenue increases actually offset deficit gains. The CBO analysis showed that rising shortfalls in Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, as well as defense spending, were the overwhelming drivers of our budget deficits. And the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act resulted in more revenue, not less. And that resulted in at least some offsetting of those increased budget deficits from those other programs. 50 years of data, folks. 50 years of data. Here's the chart right there. You guys can see that, right? 50 years of data. This is not an opinion. This is not an ideological debate. 50 years of data for industrialized nations suggests lower corporate tax rates are associated with rising revenues. Up to a point, of course. Research shows in the long run, revenue maximizing corporate rate is between 15 and 25%. You go a little bit below that, you drop corporate tax rates below 15%, and you will lose revenue. because corporations, you're just going to collect too few, even though the economy may boom more. There is an equilibrium, and there is a point where you pass equilibrium. And then 25% is the high end of that. Biden's proposal is to repeal the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the 21% rate set by the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which is basically right in the middle of the Goldilocks zone. Replace it with 28%, which is outside of the high range. Again, this is not ideological. This is not a debate. This is what the empirical evidence suggests. And a smart policy maker would follow the empirical evidence. But he's not. He's been hijacked. He's never was a smart policy guy. Guy's been wrong on everything. In 47 years career, he's never gotten a single big issue correct. Not, you find one, bring it to me. Not foreign policy, not economics, nothing. All right. He proposes to bring it to 28%, which will result in less revenue because it'll be above that high-end range, and corporations will engage in tax avoidance and decrease economic activity. All right. On a dynamic basis, the tax foundation estimated that it will actually result in about 15% less revenue. Now, as the issue of wages, real quick here, because I know we're getting close. Even the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, which is a left-wing, Paris-based bureaucracy, globalist bureaucracy, even their data shows the relationship between the corporate tax rate and wage growth. This is, I don't know what the tax foundation did, but our estimates, this is what we did. This is why we came up with the 33% being generous. If Joe Biden increases the corporate tax rate to 27, 28%, he will kill wage growth. Cutting the corporate tax rates are good for boosting workers' wages. That is a sound policy. And while it wasn't traditional on the Trump platform, and I thought, the Ryans of the world were using it as an excuse to pay off their K Streets friends and their Wall Street friends, it was consistent with Trump's promise, his worker-based promise, the forgotten man and woman, because it raised wages. We took a look at it. The evidence was clear. And again, if you were a smart policymaker, you would follow the evidence. But Biden is, one, not smart, and two, he's allowed his campaign and his policy and proposals to be hijacked by the left, which is something you should think about when we're talking about whether or not he'll ever win back those workers in Pennsylvania that he keeps saying he can appeal to. Will he really, with AOC as the energy czar? Will he really? I don't think so. That hurt Hillary Clinton badly. I'm going to put a lot of coal plants out of business. That killed her. You think Joe Biden putting, Madam Green New Deal in charge of his environmental policy and his energy policy is going to be very appealing to workers in Luzerne County or Erie County? I don't think so. I don't see it. I don't see it. Now, the media is going to be working overtime for Joe Biden in a way that even they did not do for Hillary Clinton. Because they have decided after Hillary Clinton's loss, they don't give a damn about objectivity anymore. It's their duty to, help the Democratic Party. And the idea, Angela, you are absolutely right. The idea that tax cuts just help the rich is absolutely false. Look, as Madam Producer will tell you, I was not ever really on the conservative elitist train. But over time, a lot of populist policies, I frowned on them because they didn't really end up helping people that they intended to help. And the issue of tax cuts, this is not, every time we get into one of these debates, the New York Times, the Washington Post, they write this crap opinion garbage like Greg Sargent. He's the biggest hack at the Washington Post. He wrote a garbage paper on tax cuts when before it passed. The New York Times had to retract the story with their fake couple. Do you remember that? Who they said would have ended up paying more. They had to retract it because their math was wrong. I took one look at it and I was like, sent them something like, you look stupid. They retracted it after 50 other people piled on them. They go through this same thing as if we don't like have this settled already. For the most part, Reaganomics settled a lot of this debate. But they pray and hope that another generation who did not live during that time period, who's been poisoned by the academic liberal establishment, they hope they're just too stupid or too ignorant or too gullible, actually, and too ideological to read the damn numbers themselves, to look inside the numbers for themselves, which is what we encourage you all to do here at Inside the Numbers. It's noon. Another show is down. All right. Thanks for joining us on Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I am the People's Pundit. You guys can follow me right there on Twitter if you don't already. Before we boogie out of here, okay, we're going to have some more polling results soon. All right. And then also, too, don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube page and hit the notification bell because I'm going to start front loading the polling and election stuff. Now, normally we would start with the economy. You guys, I know a lot of you guys, you like the economy and stuff like that too. But we polled you. Some of you may even have taken it. We don't do anything without conducting research. And the research was pretty clear. You guys want us to lead with the political stuff. So we're going to start to do that. So subscribe to the page on the channel on People's Pundit Daily on YouTube and hit the notification bell because if you miss the first segment of the show, you're likely going to miss the polling results and all the stuff that we're going to front load. If you like the page on Facebook, on People's Pundit Daily on Facebook, that will alert you anyway. But you need to take that extra step on YouTube, okay? And then, of course, the ultimate way to support the show is to subscribe to People's Pundit Daily online on the website, which you can do by going to ppdnews.us/subscribe. ppdnews.us/subscribe. We'll love you for it. Tomorrow, we will see you guys. We'll check out the consumer confidence. We'll go over that since we didn't have time to go over it. A couple other things. And of course, like I said, we'll front load the political stuff. So don't forget that tomorrow, okay? Don't forget to like the page, hit the notification bell, and then you'll know when it's coming on. All right, folks. Thanks for joining Inside the Numbers. Again, we will see you tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Nothing but love for you. I'm kicking rocks. Have a great rest of the day.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be. I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. There's rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love. Because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
And take a one-way ride, steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to disappear overnight, just to give into the need and leave it all behind.
'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow